Have you ever looked at a tiny little seed and wondered how in the world it becomes this massive, towering tree? Well, it's not magic. It's actually an incredible, unseen world of biological engineering. And today, we're diving deep into plant tissues, the hidden architecture that makes all of that possible.
So that's the big question, right? How does a plant tackle these huge engineering challenges? I mean, how does it build itself up, create its own internal plumbing system, and protect itself from everything the world throws at it, all while being stuck in one spot? The answer is just brilliant. It's all down to how it uses specialized tissues.
So here is how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at the two basic toolkits every plant has to work with. Then, we'll see how it uses those toolkits to solve the challenge of growth, build its own support structures, create an internal supply chain, and finally, put on a protective skin to face the world. So, let's start with those toolkits.
To really get how a plant works, you've got to understand that it operates with two fundamentally different kinds of tissues. Think of them as two separate toolkits, one for building new stuff and one for, well, doing all the specialized jobs. So on one side, you have the meristematic tissues. Let's just call them the growers. These are basically little factories of tirelessly dividing cells that create all the new parts of the plant. And on the other side, you've got the permanent tissues, the specialists. These are the cells that have grown up. They've taken on a very specific role, like transport or support, and they've stopped dividing.
So, how does a grower cell become a specialist? Well, it's through this amazing process called differentiation. You can think of it like a brand new employee getting their official job title. A basic, unassigned cell gets its mission, hey, you're a water pipe now, or your job is to be armor, and then it completely transforms itself to do that one job for the rest of its life.
Think about it like this. It's pretty much what happens with us. We all start as a single cell. As that cell divides, some cells get the message to become muscle cells, others become nerve cells. They differentiate. A plant does the exact same thing. A cell starts out in a meristem, it divides a bunch, it gets its assignment, and then it permanently specializes to do its job.
Okay, now let's look at that first huge challenge, growth. A plant is constantly pushing upwards, reaching for the sun, and downwards, searching for water. How does it manage this relentless expansion? The answer is our first toolkit, those meristematic tissues.
What's so cool is how these growth cells are designed for just one purpose. They're small and packed in there super tightly. They have a huge nucleus, which is basically the command center for cell division, and they barely have any vacuoles. Those big water storage tanks you see in mature plant cells, they don't need them because their only job is to divide, not to store stuff. They are pure, focused growth engines.
So the plant puts these growth engines in really strategic spots. First up is the apical meristem. You'll find this at the very tip of every shoot and every root. This is what drives what we call primary growth. It's what makes the plant taller and its roots longer, always reaching out for more light and more water.
But, a plant can't just get taller and taller, it also needs to get stronger, right? That's where the lateral meristem comes in. This tissue runs along the sides of the stems and roots, and it's responsible for secondary growth, making the plant wider. Think of the trunk of a tree getting thicker every single year. That's this stuff at work.
And this next one, this is where plants just get brilliantly clever. The intercalary meristem is found at the base of leaves, especially in things like grass. Now, why is that so smart? Well, if a cow comes along and eats the top of the grass, or you come along with a lawnmower, the growth doesn't happen from the tip that just got chopped off. Nope, it happens from the base, which lets the grass regrow super fast. It's a direct evolutionary answer to being eaten. How cool is that?
Okay, so the meristems have been busy creating all these new cells, but what do those cells actually become? This brings us to our next big challenge, building the physical structure of the plant and giving it the support it needs to stand up.
And the solution comes from our second toolkit, the specialists. The plant uses three main types of simple, permanent tissues as its fundamental building materials. Let's just break down what each one does.
First up is parenchyma. You can think of this as the all-rounder, the general-purpose filler tissue and storage unit of the plant. These are living cells with thin walls, which makes them perfect for holding on to food and water. Seriously, when you bite into an apple or a potato, you're mostly eating parenchyma cells. And they can even specialize further. If they get packed with chloroplasts, those little green engines for photosynthesis, they get a fancy new name, chlorenchyma. Next, we have collenchyma. Think of this as the plant's flexible structural support. These are living cells, but they have these unevenly thickened walls, which gives them both strength and pliability. This is absolutely crucial for supporting things like leaves and young stems, allowing them to bend in the wind instead of just snapping off. It's strength with a little bit of give.
And finally, for the ultimate heavy-duty toughness, we have sclerenchyma. Now get this, these cells do their job when they're dead. Their only purpose is to leave behind their incredibly thick and tough cell walls, which are reinforced with a substance called lignin. It's kind of like biological concrete. This makes them super hard and super strong. This is the tissue that makes up the husk of a coconut or the hard shell of a nut. It is literally the plant's armor.
So we've grown the plant and we've built its structure. Now for the really tricky part, logistics. How does a plant get water from its roots all the way up to its highest leaves? And then how does it get the sugar made in those leaves all the way back down to the roots? It needs a supply chain.
A plant solves this problem with two totally separate pipelines, which are built from what we call complex permanent tissues. One pipeline is completely dedicated to moving water and minerals up from the soil. The other one is for distributing food, those sugars from photosynthesis, to all the parts of the plant that need energy. These two pipelines are called the xylem and the phloem, and they operate in completely different ways. It's actually fascinating when you compare them. The xylem is the water pipe. It's a one-way street, only moving water up from the roots, and its main cells are dead, basically forming long, hollow tubes. The phloem, on the other hand, is the food delivery service. It moves sugar both up and down the plant wherever it's needed. And to manage that complex job, its main cells are very much alive. Okay, we've covered growth, structure, and transport. The final big challenge is dealing with the outside world. How does a plant protect itself from drying out, from pests? And how does it even breathe? The solution is the epidermal tissue, which is basically the plant's skin. This single layer of cells is incredibly versatile. On the leaves, it secretes a waxy layer called the cuticle, which stops the plant from drying out. Down in the soil, it grows these long extensions called root hairs to absorb way more water. And it's also dotted with these tiny little pores called stomata, which can open and close to let the plant breathe in carbon dioxide. It's a truly smart, adaptive barrier. And when you put it all together, it's really like a symphony. The meristems are composing the new parts, the simple tissues are building the structure, the complex tissues form the supply lines, and the epidermis provides that protective outer shell. It's just this intricate, perfectly coordinated system.
And here is the most amazing part of this whole story. All of this mind-boggling complexity, every single leaf, every root, every flower, is built from just those two fundamental toolkits we started with, the growers and the specialists. That's it.
Which really leaves you with a final thought. If plants, which we often see as just kind of static and simple, have evolved such sophisticated and dynamic systems just to survive, what other hidden complexities and amazing capabilities are just waiting for us to discover inside them?